Yeah. At least you can see them when you go to step on them.
Big, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those funnel spider guys.
Up here, they're about the size of a
Right.
quarter. And the lethal ones are, you have to identify them.
Wow. So you just stand on any you come across?
Yes, pretty
Just to
much.
make sure.
Come on in, everybody. We see you out there. It's time for Comics by Night for the 21st of October already, 2022. So we'll run the opening and then we'll get rolling. Not rolling. Roland's not going to be here. He can't get up this early. Scott Rosema either, apparently. And Brian K. Morris, I sent him a link, but I never heard anything back from him. So apparently he's not making it either. So where is it?
He's got a supermodel wife. He's not getting up anytime soon, is he?
Probably. Well, I don't make him get up anyway. So if he can't make it, he doesn't make it. Here's a little bump for the ICN. Here we go.
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time, with theory.
Can't nobody tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing.
Hey, everybody, come on in. It's time for Comics by Night.
What a brilliant introduction that is. It's absolutely fantastic.
Love Sam Elliott. He's just awesome. And what he was doing there is he was actually reciting, I don't remember what the name of the song was. Some rapper did a country song, and everybody was picking on it, saying that it wasn't really country, that it was actually rap, until Miley Cyrus's dad came in and said, no, it's country. Let's re-record it and I'll show you. And he re-recorded it. And now Sam Elliott here on one of these commercials for, I think it was Doritos, recited it in the middle of a Western setting just to drive that point home. It's just great. And that was part of the song. You can't tell me nothing. Nobody can tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing. Yeah, great stuff. Come on in, everybody. Comics by Night, where we talk about comics. This early in the morning for me, it is a little after 5 a.m. But where these guys are, it's about 10 mid-morning.
10, yeah.
So it's Comics by Brunch.
It's avocado time.
Yeah.
It's what? Avocado time.
Yeah. Avocado and champagne.
Married a Mexican woman, and I don't take the avocados very, very well. Not my favorite fruit.
Should have married a Mexican man.
Oh, me? No, that's not the way I work.
They know what to do with the avocados.
We have some great tamales, though. So,
what's a tamale?
Our tamales are like crack. It is treated shredded pork meat, wrapped in corn meal, wrapped in a corn husk, and boiled for 3 hours.
Wow.
I'll take it on your advice that they're good, because they sound awful.
It's amazing.
But then
Boil it.
Spotted dick sounds awful, but it's really quite nice with some custard.
There you go.
No.
No. I did a show one time, seriously, a comic show, and its focus was horror and horror movies. And we had Gunnar Hansen there, who was the Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We had Douglas Bradley there, who was Pinhead in the Hellraiser movies, and Douglas is best friends with Clive Barker. Tom Savini was there, and his daughter, and Angus Scrim, who was the tall man. Scrim, Scrimm, was the tall man in Phantasm. And we all went out for a Mexican meal one time over to this restaurant that's no longer around called Carlos's. And Douglas Bradley, who's English, turned to Gunnar Hansen, who is actually a Tex-Mex chef who specializes in Tex-Mex food, which is a combination Mexican and Southwestern, delicacies. Straight faced. What is a chimichanga? And the way he addressed it and the accent that he had, we were all rolling all across the table. And Gunnar looked at him and explained to him exactly what it was. And I think he ended up having one. But I've got a group shot of me in the background with all of these horror, big time horror icons.
Got it signed, mate. Should have got a picture out and got them all to sign it.
Well, we didn't. Cool. Back then, you didn't develop pictures on site.
No, you didn't do that.
I've got an 8x10 of it.
That's really cool.
And I hang up somewhere. Oh, it was a very memorable meal because Savini's kid at the time was very young, about 6 or 7, and she could almost put her bottom lip up to the bottom part of her nose, and it was, and she would peek up. Skill. It is. She would peek up under the table and look around at everybody with this goofy look, with wide eyes, and this goofy look on her face, and that really started the entire night. We were all just rolling. And at that point, Savini had done what was that? Dusk Till Dawn.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So he was relatively. He was recognizable.
As the guy who played Data. He was
Brent Spiner.
He was the mad scientist in Independence Day. And he said the big tamale. That was it. That was where I was trying to remember that word.
That's your only reference.
The big tamale. He's like all wide-eyed and his hair everywhere. It's really good.
You ever come over here, we'll make you a Mexican meal that you won't forget.
Cool.
It's
we do attempt to make Mexican meals here. We do attempt it.
I'm sure.
I don't live. We don't live off freezer meals. And, we make all our own food. Okay, and we make an attempt at Mexican on a regular basis. So, but yeah, to have it made properly for me would be lovely.
We had tacos last night, so.
Oh right, there you go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing with Mexican food is that it's very regional. And everybody's particular region is the way that they make it, and the way that they've made it is the way that they've made it for like decades.
Yeah.
So
it's
they're pretty refined, in their techniques. You go closer to the coasts of Mexico, you get a lot of seafood. Where the wife's family comes from, they can trace on her grandmother's side all the way back to the Aztecs.
Wow.
And that's how long they've been. They came up through Texas and came up to Michigan for the shops for the car manufacturing back in the 30s.
Wow.
And the wife's grandfather was part of the sit-down strike of the 30s when you literally worked in sweatshops and 112-degree heat and all of that, and they protested one time and took over one of the plants for about 6 days until they decided that they would allow them collective bargaining, or no more cars would end up being made. And they started the UAW out of that. And that plant was just a couple miles away from my house. It's long gone now, but all that's left is a green plaque that says, hey, this is pretty much where the middle class in America started, right here.
Fantastic. Just before we carry on, can I just show you this I found?
Absolutely. We're so deep in this comics discussion. You go ahead.
Well, just before we get back into the comics discussion, I just want to show you this. I told you back in the 90s, I used to co-write and design the Coronation Street magazine. I told you about that, didn't I? Right?
Yeah.
So I met most of the stars, and there was a point where Granada Television, who produced it, were going to going to put, Rita has the corner shop, the newsagent shop. Mm-hmm. They were going to put the magazine on the shelf in the shop.
Oh, that would be cool.
But they decided that what street in the world would have a magazine about itself? But anyway, I found this in the archive.
There she is.
Look at
there's the magazine.
Yeah.
And Rita and what's her face?
Oh, I don't really know.
Mavis, yeah, Rita and Mavis.
The girl on the right. The girl on the right has such red hair that it reminds me of Reba McEntire.
It's a wig.
Is it? Okay.
That's Barbara Knox interviewed her.
Oh, no.
She's blonde, yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
It's a wig.
Yeah.
Our childhood is now shattered.
But she's a beautiful lady.
Yeah. They had a lot of big people on that show, or go through those, live on that street for a while. Yeah.
Cliff Richard was in one episode, the singer. He was doing a show in Manchester, and he asked him if he could be on, and he's in the background having a pint, looking like Cliff Richard.
As you do.
Look, it's real life. Yeah.
Gandhi was in it, wasn't he? Joanna Lumley's in it.
Was Gandhi in it?
Ben Kingsley, yeah, he was in it in the 70s.
Oh, Ben Kingsley was in it. Right? I mean, like actually,
not actually Gandhi,
And
he came in and said, "Oh, my mouth's so dry. I've got a mouth like Gandhi's flip flop. Will you give me a pint, will you?"
Lots of people in it. Yeah. That big guy in Lord of the Rings was in it. The tall guy who mumbles. What's he called? The big tall fella.
Gandalf.
Gandalf. He was in it as well.
Oh right. Okay.
Well, he's been everywhere.
I bet he loved that.
Yeah.
He's everywhere. He's everywhere. So
we have a viewer, Bristolian Dave. All right, my babbers. He's here. He's listening while he's working.
Hey, Bristolian, how you doing, buddy?
You work. That's cool.
Me babbers. You work. It's cool. We just sit here in front of a camera and just talk all day. That's all we do.
Crap.
Yeah. Good morning, gentlemen. Indie Comics Network in the house. Thank you, HR. Always keeping an eye out with a wrench. Yeah. Nice to have a stream to listen to while I work. Great, Bristol. Appreciate you very much. Tamales are amazing, but Randy's description just turned me off. Russ, LOL. Well, I'm just being, that's once a year. We all get together, and well, not all of us, but certain people in the family get together and we make tamales. That's all we do. I've got 10 dozen sitting in my freezer over here in the corner of what's left over, and they usually don't last very long because they're pretty close to crack. So I've got a buddy who likes to get a hold of me every time right around Christmas because he knows what I give him for the holidays. Here, have a dozen tamales. Oh, thanks. Says he cooks them. Actually, you can microwave them, but microwave them in a wet paper towel so that they stay just a little soft. And then you end up eating them in front of your television. You go through a dozen.
But you don't
microwave
them for 3 hours.
Nita didn't know that we were following in Marvel's footsteps and thought we'd have a cooking program.
There we go. Yeah, cooking program this morning.
This is lifestyle at its best.
Hey everybody, I'm your host, Randy Zimmerman. I've been doing comics, believe it or not cooking tamales for most of my life, boiling tamales. I'll go in and help with we now have a tamale machine that we had to buy from the Tamale King out of Texas, so that we're not sitting there all day, because I used to sit there all day and spread the masa onto the corn husk, which is pretty meticulous. Think about spreading peanut butter on what would be the nearest thing that you can compare it to? Probably a paper plate, a thin paper plate, and then rolling it in meat. But anyway, it all goes to the flavor. More cooking. Anyway, I've been doing comics, independent comics, for 30 some years, almost 40 years, and been doing in this business, done just about everything in this business that you can imagine. I retailed for over 10 years. I did my own newspaper for 10 years, self-published under a number of different mastheads. And right now I'm printing as Arrow Comics. Again, that's a company that I first got my start back in 1985.
Wow.
Yeah. But Arrow is back. Arrow's always been a creator-owned company, and we're doing a lot of books, and we have a lot of plans for 2023, and we hope that you'll come along with it. So also joining me today is Mr. Glenn Fleming. Glenn, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Glenn Fleming. I'm a writer, artist, and publisher. My latest work, which you can get from me, is this book I wrote about my trip to see Jack Kirby at his home. And with that, you get a DVD of me talking with him in his studio. I'm also a writer, and I write science fiction. Got lots of books here. You can get all these on Amazon. Science fiction, Second World War books, travel books. And I also publish this magazine, 100-page magazine quarterly, Comics Unlimited, about comics, for which, there we go, that's the one. And I also create this character, Hatch, whose second book is will be on Indiegogo anytime soon.
And Douglas, or not Douglas, but Russ ducked out just as
he's left the building.
I'm here. I mean, I just didn't want to make noises over the top of Glenn's introduction.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm polite like that.
Sorry if anybody heard me moving books while Glenn was talking.
Yeah, it's all right.
Also with us today is Russ Leach. Russ, introduce yourself.
Hello, always prepared.
Let's scrape all our chairs now while he talks.
Yeah. Fart and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's getting that time of the morning. Good morning to everyone. I'm Russ Leach. I'm a comic book artist from the UK. I do independent stuff like Only Death Could Save Us. I'm currently on a run for Batman in the UK and Europe, and just come off of doing a year's run on Doctor Who. So been around, done a few things, and you can find out more about that at russleach.com.
So if you're not doing independent stuff, are you doing dependent stuff?
But yeah, well, it makes you dependent. That's why you go independent.
Yeah,
there you go. But you're doing fun stuff, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's all fun. I'm enjoying myself immensely, and so I'm gonna get to finish book 2. I'm incredibly late, but life happens, and everybody's gonna get a great package in the new year, and then
that's what she said.
Hey, and giggity, and then I'll move. Then I will be moving on to book 3. Book 3 is a go. It will happen. Although it looks like that will only be published through New Haven. I probably won't go to crowdfunding through that. So first book has been re-edited and is being I think it's being sent to the printers this afternoon. So there you go.
Wow.
And is currently available to look at, if not order yet, on Amazon. And you can go to I think it's Waterstones and pre-order a copy if you want that. So
is it soft cover or hard cover?
Yeah, it's soft cover. It's very similar to the book that I did through crowdfunding, but obviously not identical because you get something special from crowdfunding. You get that particular book, and that's always going to be unique and never be reprinted.
Right.
But it's a re-edited version. It's got some different stuff in it, and it's slightly thinner paper, so it's even more sort of newsprint. Actually, it's got even more of an effect that I wanted to get out of it. So I'm really looking forward. Yeah, like an old comic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it when it comes out. So.
Yeah, that'll be great.
And when is it out? When is it out, Russ?
30th of November. The book 1 will be out, and then I'm hoping to get everybody book 2 by March next year. So only a year late, but really sorry. But there you go. But yeah, they'll get some extra stuff in all the backer packages. And then I'll be working on book 3, which I would suggest, if all goes well with book 1, book 2 will go out through New Haven as well. And then book 3 will be exclusive to New Haven, but it will be cheaper for everybody to buy. And, if you've got, for instance, if you've got an Amazon Prime, you wouldn't pay for the freight, the postage either. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give back to the people that have supported me so far. So, that's the way.
Keep talking. I'm pulling up Amazon Prime right now. Let's see if we can find that for pre-order and put the link in the chat.
I don't think you can pre-order it from Amazon yet. You can only, I think you can only pre-order it from Waterstones in the UK. So
all right.
So it should be up in the net. I'll let everybody know. I mean, we'll be back on again next week. I'll let everyone know as soon as it's available for pre-order.
Great, good.
Yeah, because the only thing up there now is a looks like an album, music album. It says
you have to look only Death Can Save Us. Yeah, and that may not. Yeah, I mean, I've been over on the UK version of Amazon, so it's over there, so it might not be global yet.
Got it. Yep. Well, I was able to get a lot of the great 2000 AD volumes that were printed in England through Amazon shipped.
Yeah.
So got a whole set of Strontium dogs that way.
Yeah,
it'll definitely be worldwide.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. Cool. Bristolian says you're working on Batman.
Mm-hmm.
He's working on Batman for what's the name of the magazine?
Panini and DC have got together and they wanted to do a kids Batman. So effectively a juvenile Batman. So not actual Batman himself as a kid. No, nothing like that. It's not Batman Babies.
That would be Batboy. Yeah.
Batboy, yeah. No, it's basically original content for kids market between the age of 8 and 15, which is where Panini focus. You get a toy on the front and you get lots of games and in bits and pieces inside, puzzles and what have you. And then you also get 10 pages of strip. And they asked me to do the strip, so that's what I've been doing.
It's really more of a Silver Age strip.
Yeah, it's like a Silver Age, Bronze Age kind of strip. It's
not cartoonish looking. You're not doing Ben 10 again.
Oh no, it's not Ben 10. In
like
fact,
that.
I was asked to do some designs that were a bit Ben 10-ish. Originally, that was the original concept for it, but they said no, let's go with something more akin to what we do in the mainstream comics. So I said, okay, I'll just do my my standard kind of my superhero style, and they were pleased with it. So there you go.
And they're fun enough stories that I hope somewhere down the road they'll end up collecting everything together.
It would be really nice, but whether they get printed anywhere else but the territories that Panini cover, which would be the UK, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, Belgium, and Brazil, bizarrely. Whether they would be able to print them outside of those territories, I'm not sure. But of course, at the end of the day, the strips are owned by DC. Everything passes through DC editorial and Universal editorial, and so it's all theirs anyway. They get to own it. But I think Panini have the rights to republish it if they want to. So they could do a combined book, like an annual or something.
That was probably in their license agreement to start with, but we don't know. Anyway, everything's all legal. Everything's all licensed.
It's all legal.
It's all legal,
yeah. But part of the fun of doing that is being able to draw Batman and Robin, his whole rogues gallery.
I've just started issue 6. And so far I've managed to draw the Penguin, Joker, Catwoman, Two-Face, the Riddler, and Scarecrow.
So you can finish now then.
So it's like, and I've just done. I'm done. And Poison Ivy is in the one I've just finished.
Okay.
And I've just drawn. You can have a quick look at the cover for issue 6. Just a quick.
Wow,
Hang on,
Fantastic.
I gotta blow that up. There we are. Oh yeah, there you go.
So
that's awesome looking.
So I've got Dr. Freeze or Mr. Freeze and Hugo Strange in issue 6, which I'm currently doing now. So yeah, you get to draw loads. It's great fun, and of course, it's absolutely in my wheelhouse. What I've been banging on about for yonks is getting kids back into comics, creating comics for that sort of all ages environment. And so I'm really enjoying myself. So hopefully, touch wood, long may it last.
Yeah. So all you've got to do now,
if you can't sell Batman,
all you've got to do now is Superman and Spider-Man. You can retire, can't you?
Yeah.
Maybe not financially, but
wouldn't that? No.
Now, these icons have become so watered down. You'll end up doing a different version of Spider-Man and Superman than what you want to draw anyway.
The trouble with Spider-Man is obviously it's Marvel and Disney said once they bought Marvel that they wanted all their production back in house.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they can't use British artists or British writers or whatever, but it means that everything must be held in the US. And so that actually stopped Panini creating original stories, which is what they were doing for quite a while, and doing it very successfully for a kids market. So that was a bit of a pity, to be honest. And it certainly stopped a lot of artists in the UK getting their shot, as it were. But they've been, obviously, things move on, things change, and Jason is actually the editor for all the Batman comics that Panini do, and obviously most of them are reprints, although they're very specific. They don't just churn out everything that comes out. They reprint certain stories, and they got this opportunity, and obviously, it happened. So it's really good. So you never know, maybe. I mean, I'm really touching wood here. I'm really crossing my fingers that I might get like a Superman guest appearance or something.
So what you really
so cool.
What you really need is a Batman Doctor Who crossover. I wonder who could draw that. Who could we get to draw that?
No, I don't want to do that.
Why not? That'd be great.
Well, actually, no, I do want to do it because I get paid. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but if they approached you with a Batman Tom Baker Doctor Who, you probably
how good would that
jump
be?
At it. Yeah,
but that isn't going to happen, is it? Because technically, Doctor Who is part of the Marvel universe, isn't it?
It all depends on how technical you want to.
Yeah, because they were part of Marvel UK.
Yeah.
The whole thing was kind of bundled up together, and I believe that sort of it's more towards that end. Although obviously it's owned by the BBC.
Well, don't forget, I don't know if you know this, but back in the mid '60s in TV21, there was a strip on the back page called about the Daleks. It was just purely about the Daleks and their sort of adventures, and that was because Doctor Who was tied in with the BBC. Yeah, obviously licensed. But Terry Nation, who created the Daleks, owned the Daleks, and I think his estate still do.
Yes, they do.
And he sort of, as I understand it, he leased the Daleks to the BBC.
Yep.
And when Jerry Anderson's comic came along in the '60s, they wanted some other TV stuff in, apart from obviously Jerry Anderson's stuff, and it was Terry Nation did. I don't think he wrote it, but it was produced on the back page.
Well, getting Daleks into a Doctor Who story in a comic is an absolute nightmare because you have to pay for each Dalek. Yeah. Apparently, I'm going off word of mouth here. You have to pay for each Dalek, so you might have like one pay or the appearance of a Dalek. So you might have like, I think it works out that if you have a page, you have like an army of Daleks on that one page, and then don't show them for the rest of the book or something. So you only have to pay for them once.
Well, that's like that story I told you about that Avengers, the British Avengers artwork that DC Thompson let me use.
Yeah.
I asked why they've got something like 150 pages of that Freyo's artwork. That Spanish guy showed it on the show a few weeks ago. In a box on a shelf, and I said, why don't you put this together? This would sell a lot of copies, and they couldn't because they owned the artwork, the physical artwork. Somebody owned the name, the Avengers, and somebody owned the logo, Carlton Television, and they owned and I said on the show, why can't people just sort of say, let's put it out and have a third each?
Yeah,
because they're all just driven by finance. That's it. They're not driven by getting the art out there or getting the entertainment out. They're driven by how much am I going to make out of this?
So what they do is they don't make anything.
Right. No, exactly. Yep. But this
artwork was finished in 1969, and it's never been reprinted. I show you some on the show, and it's all full color, beautiful artwork, and all that, and it's in a box on a shelf somewhere in Dundee, in Scotland.
But that's the nature of publishing and entertainment in general, isn't it?
It's just pathetic.
Well, it's kind of the two-edged sword over in Britain, where they split the rights up between the talent and the producers. And that's one of the things that keeps, from what I understand, that keeps 2000 ADs from being collected by Progs into archive books, which they really need to do, because all of those stories, even the little small oddball stories and the Future Shocks and all that, are co-owned by the publisher as well as the talent. So when that changed back in I think it was the 90s, back in the 90s, I think it was when that changed, you literally saw the quality of 2000 AD take a big hit and drop. and then they went to a slicker magazine style, and it dropped again, and it's
when I stopped buying it.
Yeah, it's a shadow of what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, it's a shadow of what it was.
I remember Dave Gibbons wrote a Rogue Trooper, and this other guy painted it, and it was nothing like it didn't get the essence of the original Finley Day Cam Kennedy Rogue Trooper, you know.
It's not the same. Yeah.
So I just stopped buying the title. I bought Crisis for a while. Remember that Crisis one? That really
I had Crisis.
One?
I've got a few. Yeah, I've got a few of those. And Deadline as well. Do you remember Deadline?
Yeah,
that's where Tank Girl started.
Yeah,
Jamie Hewlett in there. Yeah,
I remember Carlos Esquera did a lot of artwork in Crisis, didn't he?
Yes, he did a lot of work for Crisis. Yeah,
I've got a few copies of a magazine called Toxic that
I've got Toxic
as well. Yeah, nice stuff. One of my favorite properties that should be a movie, really should be a movie, is The Bogeyman. That's hilarious. It's about a guy in starts out in an insane asylum who looks exactly like Humphrey Bogart, and he ends up escaping from the asylum, and he goes off on his from his narration. It's a hard-boiled detective adventure, when actually he's dealing with people in real life, and people eventually figure out that he's nuts because he's out there reciting old movie lines, and he's being Bogart.
That's inspired. That's really good.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's super clever. But
who wrote that one?
The Bogeyman. Oh, I don't remember. I'd have to dig it up and tell you. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to think of
not Pat Mills.
Parkhouse, maybe, and Steve Dillon might have done the artwork on that.
Right.
Somebody had Bogart's likeness down. That might be part of the problem why you don't see it around.
I vaguely remember seeing some pages from that strip.
It absolutely. I loved it. It was brilliant because he's out there.
I remember the likenesses from the strip.
He's in trench coat, floppy hat, just like in all of
they
the
got
Bogart
his face
movies. He's got his face
just right. Yeah.
He's calling everybody sweetheart, and listen, sweetheart, that's the way it goes down. Yeah, hard-boiled detective dialogue and it's third person, so he's first person, so he's constantly thinking caption balloons in hard-boiled detective lingo. Raymond Chandler would have been proud. That kind of stuff. Somebody really did their research on that genre.
What's that thing when I think it's on a Bonzo Dog Doodah band. Do you remember those from way back? And he says, this other guy said, "Have you got a light Mac?" And he says, "No, but I got a dark brown overcoat." It's that kind of delivery and that kind of line.
That's all I need. That's all I need, bub.
Light Mac. Very good.
Bristolian about Batman says that's totally cool, Russ. Well done on getting that gig, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate you, Dave, for being here. Marvy in the house, greetings, sinners. Unfortunately, I won't be able to hear the show. I'll catch you later on the replay.
That's Marv's standard comment, isn't it?
It is. He pops in long enough to say he can't pop in. That'll catch us later. Marvy, though, he has grown so much. He's done the second issue of Sin Killer. If it's not out over there, it's about to go. It's about to get out. A huge leap forward. Just amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And like our topic today, that we might actually swing around to, about 20 minutes.
Get on it.
Is about composition and guiding your eye across the page, and whether or not that's important. How you construct a page. Do you do a page panel by panel? Or do you do a page as an entire page and work on your composition? I know a lot of artists that have sweated over their thumbnails, making sure their composition was just right and that they were guiding the eye across. And other artists really don't care what it is as long as it's there. So I never really thought it was that important until, and I've said this before, I ran across a book by Art Spiegelman on the life of Jack Cole, and specifically his Plastic Man work, and how he pointed out how Cole used Plastic Man in order to guide your eye left to right, up to down. Mm-hmm. Just phenomenal stuff when you sit and look at it. You're like going, man, somebody had a lot of time on their hands, or they were really thinking this through.
But he does have the advantage there of the guy who can stretch to do that, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, so he does.
He's using everything he's got,
mm-hmm.
But I think that's I think that's exactly what you're saying there. Except that phrase, using what's available.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, I don't sweat over the thumbnails.
No.
Okay, I want to get the stuff out. I mean, a lot of the time I'm on a deadline anyway.
right.
So I've just got to get this stuff out. I think sometimes the whole process of comic book production can become bloated if you've got the time to bloat it. And I think the genius stuff that we've seen is all too often from people who were working at incredible pace.
Yeah, spontaneous as well.
Spontaneously,
you can overthink it all, can't you?
Exactly.
So true. And a lot of young, especially young artists, do. They tend to overthink the work.
Yeah, and the layouts. If you go back and look through older comics, actually, to be honest, even if you look through comics sort of 2000, 2010, you know, if right the way up to around that time, you can look back through those comics, and even though I would say that the execution of the art has probably improved quite a bit up to today's standards, up until about 2010, I think you could see that sort of at pace work, and that you could even see where they were making mistakes, and the flow of the page didn't actually flow that well. But for the most part, most pages flowed well, and it was done at pace. It was done with a deadline in mind, and the guys that were doing it, the girls and guys that were doing it, they were naturals. They honed their craft so well that they knew what they were doing on a very instinctual level.
That's what it was.
Didn't have to sit there and, you know, I mean, obviously, I'm sure that there are some artists that have always done that. Okay, this is a generalization, a vast generalization, but they would just be getting on with the job because they knew that they had to hit a deadline. And I think as things have changed over the last 10, 15 years, where you've got different teams coming in on books, and kind of like they're obviously given sort of like a year to do 6 months work, and then somebody else is given a year to do 6 months work, and then they tack it all together. Okay, rather than the way it used to be back in the day, you had a few artists, and a lot of the time the same artists would stay on a run for a long time. And they'd be churning this stuff out, and they'd just get to a point where they didn't need to do thumbnails really. And obviously they do thumbnails for covers, but I don't think, you know, thumbnails really, apart from something very, very loose, ever occurred. And obviously with someone like Kirby, thumbnails never existed. He just
I don't think Jack Kirby knew what a thumbnail was.
No, exactly. So I think thumbnails to a degree are a bit of a modern luxury. I think I see thumbnails as a modern luxury, and especially when I'm almost always on a bloody deadline. I don't have a lot of time certainly not for detailed thumbnails. And the way that I work now, so this does come down to the way people work. The way that I work now, because I'm digitally penciling, my thumbnails are effectively the sketch for the page anyway. Because you can just blow it up and down. You can just zoom in and out on the page. So you can get some broad lines in and then go straight into your sketch and you're away. So
Can I show you some of my thumbnails and the artwork I got?
Well, let's get to that in just a second. Okay, I just want to say, you say that thumbnails probably didn't exist, but I think they did. But it was in the artist's head.
I mean,
you know, Kirby was known to start at the upper left corner and work down to the lower right, and boom, there was a completed page by the time he got down to the lower right, and he was ready for the next one. But that's because he was a workhorse.
He was a step outside, I think. I think Kirby's production, the way that you see how he worked, he's one of those. He's a savant. Okay, he's outside of everyone else. Okay, he just sits on his own level.
He's number one in a league of one.
Exactly.
He's powerfully, I mean, ultimately skilled.
Yeah.
Also, is what I would consider it to be. Not anybody, but the truly gifted artist who was there, knew why they were there, and was there to learn and be there, got to that level after a long time. I think Buscema, John Buscema, Sal Buscema even also was kicking stuff out on a very instinctual level and very quickly.
Yeah, but again,
and moving a lot of product. Aparo, I think, was there.
Look at them compared to Jack Kirby. Okay.
Yes.
Jack Kirby had the thumbnail in his head. Boom, just did it. Top left, down the bottom right, done it. people like Buscema, Neil Adams, I would imagine, all these like, stock silver to bronze age fantastic artists, they probably would have done either small thumbnails, or they themselves, if you look at a lot of their work, especially Buscema, he ended up doing a lot of layouts rather than penciled work. Yeah. So there in itself is they're almost thumbnails, they're just big thumbnails.
Same thing.
And so it was all about production. It was all about just getting the job out the door, whereas I think that's why I say I think possibly now a thumbnail is a little bit of a luxury that's given to, I mean, obviously, there's lots of artists out there who say, I'm up against it all the time, but they're probably driving for a standard of finish that's way beyond the standard of finishes that we used to get in comics. And it's this forever battle between getting something that looks so beautiful on the page or actually tells a story.
Yeah.
And it's just, the whole world is different. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm just saying that the whole production and world of producing comics has just changed radically, right, from because of the end delivery. The things have changed. So I think thumbnails are a personal thing. Personally, I think they come down to each artist and how they want to work. For me, I just tend to just get straight into it, and I think some of that is the way that I work because of the way that I pencil digitally and I can zoom in and out. I tend to just like bung straight in because I can do that. And I am effectively doing thumbnails of a sort, but not in the way that you would normally think, not in the way that somebody would say, okay, I've got a whole book here and I'm going to put out a thumbnail for each page. I can't be doing with that. Sorry.
I remember reading about Rich Buckler, and he, I've never done this. I don't think I would ever do this. He would do his thumbnails and then, like you say, blow them up on a light box or whatever.
I used to do that.
And then work over those. And I always find that if you do anything like that, you sort of lose the spontaneity of it, which I do thumbnails of things, but I'm generally working out the whole thing first. Like you're doing your composition on the thumbnail, so you're not wasting on the board, or you do a drawing wrong, or you're not happy with it and all that kind of thing. Try and get all that stuff nailed and then do the actual page. But Rich Buckler used to enlarge those. I could never work that out. I mean, obviously he's a very good artist and was successful and knows what he's doing, but I would never work that way. I couldn't work that way, I don't think.
Everybody works differently from the next. One artist works different from the next artist.
I remember doing some indie books back in the day, early 90s. I was doing some indie books, and I remember doing sort of like thumbnails that were like sort of A5 thumbnails, and then blowing them up on a photocopier so that I had them on a light box so that I could gauge where I'd been going. But that's completely gone now. I don't do that anymore. Maybe I don't need to do it anymore. I don't know. I'm not suggesting that I'm perfect in any way. I'm not. But I've obviously moved on from needing that crutch, as it were, of that thumbnail. I can do it in a different way now. So
when I do my own work, when I do my own stories, I write in thumbnails.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Usually with a spiral pad that'll have a breakdown of the panels and dialogue in the gutter or in the sides. So I know where the story is and where it's going and how it breaks down page by page. Yeah. I understand Gene Colan used to work on beats. He would break the script down into basic beats, 3 or 4 or 5, beats. Then he'd start up in the upper left-hand corner and just draw. And then when that drawing was done, he would rule it or French curve it in, the gutter in, and just go over to the next one. That's why when you see some of his work, especially a lot of his later work, you've got these really crazy gutters, crazy wavy gutters, because he just cut off the artwork, boxed off the artwork and moved over to the next one.
Right. That's cool. I think the way that certainly the way I've written the first book and how I came to the second book, it was all about pretty much what you're saying there, beats. It was all about picking out the bits that I wanted to jump to the front, the bits that I wanted to pace the story with. Right. And it's like, it's almost like they're peaks. If you think about the story as a wave, okay, you've got a peak, and then it goes down and comes back up again, and goes down and comes back up again, and it moves through the story in that way, outside of the arc of the characters and the arc of the story, outside of, you know, beginning, middle, and end, which are in themselves their own peaks and troughs. So it becomes, you analyze it in that way, and it's actually sounds quite complicated, but it's something that you kind of tend to do sort of naturally. I mean,
it becomes instinctual after a while.
Yeah, I'm obviously a frustrated writer, okay, because I wrote 2 books. I've published one, publishing the second one. We'll go to the third one. Have help with writing from Rick, obviously. But it's that creative. You want to get into it, and you don't just want to draw pretty pictures.
Yes,
you want to tell a story.
Yep,
and that's the driving force behind what I do and what I try to do as you know, by writing my own book as well as just wanting to illustrate other people's stories.
Well, one of the things I picked up from Comics and Sequential Art by Eisner is every panel is a beat. Every beat is a frozen moment in time. Yeah. Every panel that you do has to either further the story or the entertainment value of the story. You're either telling a joke or you're moving that plot along. Every panel has to do that in order for it to stay entertaining and to stay at a quick clip.
Yeah. He's a master, wasn't he?
Some of his spirit work, I still sit there and just marvel at it. Almost every story that he did was a lesson in sequential art.
Was he doing all the artwork on that, or did he have a studio?
Depending on the place and time. He usually worked with 1 or 2 assistants, but there was a period there where he was sending scripts in while he was off in the Army during World War II. And he had a lot of fill-in artists that came in and drew that up. Jack Cole was one of those. Lou Fine was working with him. Reed Crandall.
Did they do it in his style?
For him. They tried, yeah. They tried to do it. When he got out from the war, he just took everything over. And I'm not sure if he worked with assistants during that period. There's 3 or 4 years there that people consider to be the classic spirit eras, where it's all him. He's doing as much on it as he possibly can. It's just phenomenal stuff. And if he didn't, he had a couple of apprentices filling in, inking black spaces or whatever.
Did he do the lettering? Because he used to do often the splash pages. The title would be part of the drawing, wouldn't it?
That's the establishing shot usually for the story. But he incorporated the words "of spirit" by Will Eisner in so many interesting ways. Yeah.
Yeah, he was incredible.
Well, at that point also with the spirit section, that was literally the cover for the spirit section. It was the first page of the spirit story. So it had to be big, it had to be graphically pleasing, and it had to catch the eyes, because the spirit sections were all tucked into newspapers and circulated along with the Sunday Funnies page. So, and I think they were saying 9 million at a time. He had so many newspapers that were following him. The numbers on the spirit sections were phenomenal, and there's so very few of those that survived, you know, because of paper drives or whatever, that anybody who's subscribed to that Sunday paper, like around here, we had the Detroit News would carry the spirit section. So a lot of the spirit sections that you see offered in this area all have the Detroit News banner across the top. There was about an inch or so across the top that was left blank for the newspapers to plant their own logo on.
Yeah.
And probably less space than that. But
how many issues of the Spirit are there? Do you know?
I'm not sure. There's 24 volumes of material that DC reprinted everything. There's 26 total, but the 25th is the Spirit comic strip that he did for a few years. And the 26th is everything that was done after the Spirit section stopped. The Harvey reprints and the covers that he did for Kitchen Sink and whatever other incidental spirit art that went along with that.
I wonder where all the artwork is.
I don't know.
Let's hope somebody's got it.
I have seen an original from the Spirit, one of the Spirit sections that Eisner did. It was on display on a traveling comic book art display that my local art institute had on display. That's the same place I saw there's a little 5x7 manila sketch pad, if you remember that art or that paper that you used to get in school, the scratchy manila paper that has a pencil drawing of Superman by Schuster on it. That's just said there. You had to squint. They had it up above you know, you had to look up at it and squint at it in order to see it, but it was beautiful. Just you sit there and you go, holy crap.
So did they have it out? Did they have it out in the daylight, being worn away? Because when I went to London,
it was out in open light. Yeah,
I went to London to look at what they think is the first cartoon of which Leonardo did, and you had to walk into like a little room and press this button, and this green light shone over it for 10 seconds, and then you had to get out.
I was in Memphis one time and saw a exhibit of children's book art. You know, that's when I realized Curious George was all done in colored pencil. You know, and just amazing. And in extremely low light in a frame with a guard.
Did he have a tail or not?
Did he have a tie?
A tail.
No. A tail? I don't remember.
Mm.
Is that a question?
Was
that a feature that the artist would drop off every once in a while?
I don't know, but there was a bit of a was it the Mandela effect? People arguing over whether he had a tail or not.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I've not really seen it much.
I don't remember, but I have drawn my share of monkeys. And
monkeys have tails. Yeah.
Tail is
apes don't have tails.
Add-on and sometimes doesn't make the picture. Yeah.
I've got some pages if you want to look at some
absolutely
examples.
String them up there. But the point I was going to say, in extremely low light, also under glass, it was one of the original Alice illustrations. The illustration of her standing, holding the stork wicket, I guess it would be, with the droopy stork. That was amazing to see.
Yeah, beautiful stuff.
Yeah. I also saw a John R. Neal illustration, and John R. Neal did the Wizard of Oz books after Winslow did the first one. O'Neill did all the rest of the Baum books. And there was a beautifully huge, and it was very huge. It was about the size of a movie poster, about 2 foot by probably 3 or 4 foot tall, of representing Treasure Island. That was just amazing. It had a kid writing in a book, and back behind him was an imagination cloud with the ship and Long John Silver and a few other scenes in it. That was just beautiful. Remember that distinctly. Just excellently done. Here, Bristolian Dave says, would you say the thumbnail thing is down to people actually having time to practice and perfect their craft?
No.
I think it's a choice.
Whereas today's mainstream artists tend to be plucked from other crafts that aren't necessarily comics.
I think that covers exactly what you're saying there. I think it's a choice, and I think it comes from art school and design school, and it's something that people are taught. I was taught to do thumbnails when I was in college, and it was just a thing you did. And in my design, back in my previous life, as an art director and designer, that was something you did all the time. It was a standard thing because you wanted to get multiple ideas out. Okay, that's why thumbnails are really good for covers, because you can get some multiple ideas about how you would present the cover. But thumbnails for pages,
for
sequential art, that's a different kettle of fish, because effectively why you're doing those is you're trying to underpin your own ideas to get the story going. Well, there it comes into, if you know your craft, if you do an awful lot of comic book and sequential storytelling, then you probably don't need to rely on your thumbnails anywhere near as much. It's not to say that people shouldn't do them or that they're not correct in doing them. Everybody's got their own way of doing it, and every artist has their own way of producing. But certainly, as we were talking earlier, those artists back in the day probably didn't have time to do a thumbnail for an issue of the Avengers this month or this week. Even they were pumping out pages at such a pace that they had an instinct of how to do it because of their experience.
That goes back to what you were saying about waves. I think that the talent comes in waves. It's like in the 60s with all the music. And in the 60s, I know they've been drawing for 20 years, but we had Kirby and Buscema and all those people. And then in my eyes, the wave is on a low at the moment with the talent wise. There's people around, but then
yeah.
but I think it will come back, and there will be a surge of talent that will come back.
I think it's that way with all popular entertainment at the moment, because music is certainly on a creative lull.
I think that can be harsh on some of the artists out there that are producing superb, beautiful work. But I do think that there is more of a focus on comic books and comic book pages on the finished art and the final look and getting the most beautiful page in the world out, rather than the storytelling. I'm not saying they're not telling stories and those artists aren't doing it well. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the focus seems to have shifted for me.
Jim Lee's fault.
It's all Jim Lee's fault.
It's not. It's not like me to be harsh, but what I'm saying is that in those back in the day, as the quote is, that awful quote. Back in the day, you had so much talent. Like off the top of my head, Kirby, Sinnott, Ditko, Buscema, Wood, Swan, Anderson, right?
The list goes on.
And forever, and then the same with the music. You got the Beatles, the Stones, the Eagles, Cat Stevens, and Tom Jones, and whatever you want, right? And
go ahead.
But now the whole thing to me is on a dip, and there are good artists out there. Of course, there are singers, artists, comic artists, whatever, but not as many as there were in the surge.
You don't have the same volume, the same density.
Yeah.
It's about having that team, isn't it? Depth and breadth of talent in the team, as it were, and
it's also,
that isn't there at the moment.
Yeah,
it's also about the level of competition, because everybody talks about the McCartney-Lennon competition, and they being as talented as they were really stepped up the talent of Starr and Harrison.
that those artists, those comic book artists from the late Silver Age into the early 90s, they were all pushing each other. Every one of them looked at each other's work and went,
absolutely,
right, okay, that's where I've got to go next.
There's a great story with Lennon McCartney when Paul McCartney says that he went to the studio and John Lennon had brought Strawberry Fields. And Paul thought, right, okay, a sort of friendly rivalry type of thing, or maybe it was a bit more intense than that. McCartney sort of went home, he says, and he came back in the next day with Penny Lane. So they pushed each other all the time.
Those two songs.
God, and then they released them on a double A single, double-sided single.
But I think you had some. If we're talking about comic books, I think you had some of that in the 90s. In all fairness, and end of the 90s when you had you had Mike Mignola coming to the fore. Obviously, Jim Lee was there, and there was a whole bunch of Jim Lee cloning going on.
Well, I think you saw a little bit of a step up in that art when Image started, when these guys stepped off and said, "Now we're going to do our best stuff."
Yeah, you had some competition going on, and there was a real push, and I think that was the last time that we saw anything as intense as that. There was certainly some fantastic artists in the late 2010s, but now there's not as many, exactly like you're saying, Glenn. It's just that the level has numbers have gone down. And how much of that is down to the environment? If you're an artist and somebody's paying you $50 a page, maybe you're not going to put as much into it. Just saying, it's just a point that you're throwing out there. And that doesn't matter whether it's Marvel or DC or Image or whoever it might be you might be working for. You've got to make ends meet, and so the lower the page rate, the quicker that page is going to be, or the more shortcuts you're going to take. And so some artists that there may be stuff out there. I've heard people say, "Oh, this is just a pamphlet." It's it's like the pamphlet you get in a plane for knowing where the exits are and that kind of stuff. And that's a reasonable criticism to level, but it's only part of the story. You may find that these people are absolutely brilliant artists, okay, and they're coming to their board and going, right, I got to get this done. I've got a gig. I'm doing the gig. I'm getting paid. I'm walking away, because you have to make money. You have to make your living. It can be. I think sometimes the criticism can be a little unfair, because people are just trying to make ends meet. But the criticism shouldn't be on the individual artists. It shouldn't be on the people that are getting taken on to be paid. It should be on the larger publishers saying, come on, you know, up your game, give those artists, give those creators a little bit more. Okay. You won't have the same arguments for people over IP if you give them more for the pages they produce in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with the stuff that I'm doing. Obviously, I haven't created Batman. I haven't created Doctor Who. Although in the Doctor Who strips I did for Doctor Who Adventures, I created loads of characters. Okay, I designed loads and loads of stuff because we weren't able to use the villains from the show because they didn't want to mess with the canon. Okay, so I created loads of stuff, but that was all the BBC. That was there as soon as I left the page. It was theirs. I got paid for my page of work, and I got paid well. To be honest, Panini pay a good page rate. Okay, so I was happy. I walked away. I don't care if they use that in a Doctor Who episode. That's fine. I don't care. I've done my job. I'm an art monkey. I'm an art monkey. Okay, that's what I do. Okay, but so if you were to give people proper recompense for their work on a daily basis, they're not going to scream at you over IP later.
That would be the ideal. You know?
I wonder how much that applies to, you know, you must have heard about the footballers, Russ, where they suddenly get a massive contract on like £200,000 a week, and when they get that contract, they don't produce anymore. They don't.
It's the argument, isn't it? That's why the England team's so crap.
Yeah.
Why it's constantly so crap is because it's full of prima donnas.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were to take the whole of the England team from the championship, from the next league down, or even the league below that, I'd be happy to lose every bloody game because you know that every one of them without there, you know, like I'm playing for my side, I'm playing for my country.
Well, I remember there was
whereas the ones from the Premiership are just like, oh, how's this going to make me more money? If I do well in this tournament, some other team's going to pick me up.
Just in the football thing, you know who Jeff Hurst is, Russ?
Yeah,
he scored the only 2-goal hat trick in the World Cup. when we won the World Cup, and he scored a hat trick. He scored 3 goals in the World Cup. Never been done before, never been done since. We won the World Cup, and a year after that, so Jeff Hurst, the big guy, he's the big guy. He's the centre forward. He's the big guy, and he took Alf Ramsey, who was the manager, home. Took him home from a training session, and when he dropped him off, he said, "See you next time, boss." And Ramsey came back and said, "If selected, Jeff." Just to keep him on and he drove home thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not
the World Cup.
I've played
Mind your place, mate."
That's right. Yeah.
Bit of respect. That's good.
Like Han Solo. Great kid. Don't get cocky.
Don't get cocky.
Ojo says, "Hail, gents. Hail, Dave. Thanks for getting in on that buy one back one conversation with T-Bunny the other day." Oh, there you go. Crystolian says, "There's no competition in mainstream now with people getting their places because of other factors rather than talent." Absolutely. That is also part of the problem. You know, it's not who you know. It's who you, well, whatever. Yeah, the big publishers are hiring people based on ideology versus talent. Yeah, no worries. No worries, Hojo. I'd say more of an art gorilla, Russ. An art gorilla.
Art monkey.
Yeah, an art monkey.
Yeah, no tails here.
Yeah.
I don't think your monkey has a tail. He's got a bump.
No, he's just got a bump. Yeah,
he's got a bump on his bum.
Yeah, he's got a tag.
He's got a tag,
bump. Yeah. Anyway, you have stuff to show us. Here we go.
Yeah. I just thought, since we're talking about composition, okay, so the composition is D is in the graveyard, and there's an altercation or a conversation between himself and a vicar or a priest, and he's off looking. He knows that something's wrong with D. Okay, so that's my premise. That's my story. We go down and see if we can find the sketch for this. So get an interesting thing. So there you go. That was probably my thumbnail.
Yeah.
All right. That was it. All right. And then I played about with some bits.
And you're also writing it in the panels as well.
And I'm writing it in the panels. I'm looking at what I'm doing. So that was a thumbnail, but I probably did it. I probably just sketched it in at that size, blew it up, and then went in.
Yeah, but it is a thumbnail, isn't it? Because you were working out the composition and the flow of the story in it, and that's what that is.
It is, and that's what I'm saying. But it's not like so many people would create their thumbnails and do lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of little thumbnails. It's not something that I do. So I've
Right.
moved on to the next page here. So D is looking up. You see him looking up. He's now looking up again, and you're zooming into D's face and then zooming out into Chrissy's face where she's in trouble. So it's a transition.
Mhm.
And again, that was just where we. Here you go.
That's a very
bit of
John
working
Buse
out.
on the face there, Russ.
Yeah. So there's just a little bit of working out going on there, just mucking about.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't take much. It's very simple. And then into so the next page you've transitioned. You're in the room with Chrissy. Okay, she's screaming like, "What the hell's going on?" And then you see the face of the thing that's interacting with her. Okay, and we've got some text on the page there for you.
Lovely.
And again, let's go into the sketches here lower down. No, it's a hand there that I use for reference. Use reference, kids.
Yeah.
So you can see, just the sketchy nature of it.
Yeah,
Just like bang it in. But it's working on the fly rather than doing those thumbnails. So it's like I'm literally transposing the script into what I'm doing on the page as I'm doing it, rather than right. Okay, this has got to be like this, and I'd quite like a lot of the time, actually, much like I mentioned earlier. And then you end up moving into a full page splash. There you go. There's a sketch for it there. So a lot of people also, a lot of artists also use it as a way of pacing their design on their page. So they'd be like, "Oh, I've got a big half page sort of panel on the left here, with a couple of small panels. I don't want to repeat that layout on the next page." So that at a glance they'd be able to see that in their thumbnails if they've got them all laid down in some kind of thumbnail plan. So I can understand why people would do that, or how artists would do that. But personally, I kind of keep an eye on my layouts as I'm going through, and just check the previous page. And I don't want to duplicate the layout from the previous page. But at the same time, if the story suggests you have to, then that's what you got to do, because the story is king, not the layout and the design of the page.
Right.
Yep.
So there you go. That was just that was just a few pages. There you go. There's a Batman page. It doesn't look very Batman. There's a Batman page. Doesn't look very Batman. But that's how they start off.
Yeah.
That's how they start off. Yeah. So that's how it works. So there you go. Just thought I'd share just share how, like, a real world example of how that actually works in my world, at least, and why the term thumbnail means different things to different people, I think.
Yeah.
Your thumbnails are your roughs.
Yeah, I'm just roughing it and just moving through,
Yeah, but at the same time, while you're roughing it out, you're doing the composition, you're figuring out how the flow is going to run on the panel.
Which talks to what we were talking about earlier about having experience. So so like you rely on your thumbnails early on, which is what I did used to do. And now I'm getting to a point where I'm just running through pages and getting them done, and keeping a mental note of, the kind of the layout of the pages. But also, like I say, drawing in this way digitally, you can have those files up and available, so you can flick backwards and forwards through them. So definitely the environment and the production, the approach to production has changed radically over the past 20 years.
I take it the script that you're working on is broken down by pages.
So I broke the script down for Only Death Can Save Us into panels.
Okay.
But very, very loose. And that's because I was focusing, like we were saying earlier, on the beats. So I wanted to put them, and also those beats had turned themselves, because I'm the artist on the book, I had the vision of maybe 5 or 6 pages that were going to be in the book before I laid out the script. So I had the general story, and that needed to be scripted into pages and panels. And prior to that point, I had several images that I knew must be in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so you pinpoint those things and you pick them out as your high points, as you pick them out as your beats.
Right.
And then after that, I scripted over the top. In book 2, what I did was I had a general arc of what I wanted to happen, and I picked out those points again, those visual points that I really knew I wanted to have a page that looked like this, or I wanted to have a scene that had this in it. And then I gave that whole lot over to Rick, and he produced a page-by-page breakdown. A breakdown of, like, say, okay, pages 8 to 12 is this scene, and the scene contains these things. Okay. And I'd say, yeah, okay, that's fine. And I'd go away and draw all the pages. And so we didn't actually get a script in the way that you'd normally have a script. We didn't even have the Stan Lee thing for one page. We had it for several pages. So he'd break it down into scenes. I'd draw the scenes, bearing in mind that it was my story. Okay. So I was intimately integrated into what the story was, as well as just drawing somebody else's story from a description. And then he would take that and add the script over the top of it. I would get it lettered and in, and then I'd edit it. And sometimes I'd change the script slightly because I felt there was a nuance that needed changes or whatever. So it was definitely a backwards and forwards. I mean, that's as I think that's the most collaborative thing I've ever done, is my book. So it was my book, my story, and yet it was hugely collaborative because of the work that I did with Rick and how much he brought to the party, to the point that now we're a team on that book, with our fingers crossed that it'll make some money one day.
Yeah.
But whereas the Batman stuff and the Doctor Who stuff, that comes in a page breakdown with a panel breakdown. But again, there's nothing too strict about it. Again, it's who you work with. So, for instance, with the Jason, the editor on Batman, has been writing it so far. There may be other writers coming in. Hopefully there will be, but so far he's been writing it. On Doctor Who, they actually had people from the series writing it and other places, and then Jason and the other guys, Marcus, would edit it over the top. But in both cases, the editor would, or the writer being Jason, the editors would allow me to get into the story and go, no, that panel, that can't work on that page. It's got to go on to the next page. So they'd allow me that room to tell the story from a sequential perspective rather than just the script's perspective.
Sure.
So I've just done a page. I have no doubt that it will be fine. I've had a page where I had 6 panels and there was just so much to fit into those 6 panels. And the next page was a splash page. So I've just popped the 6th panel onto the next page as an inset and made sure that it works sequentially with it. So, you know, they'll allow you to do that. They'll allow you to swap panels about if it means that it helps the story.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it all boils down to the storytelling, doesn't it? At the end of the day, everything. It's the layout, the composition, the characterization, the placement of balloons, the whole thing. It's all about advancing the story in a manner that is, attainable for everybody to understand and want to turn the page and all that kind of thing.
Rustolian says a book without story is just a book full of pinup posters.
Yeah, and to be honest, there were a few books like that in the 90s.
Yeah, the first couple of years of Image.
There were plenty of books like that in the 90s that were
that
beautiful.
And a lot of circle template use. That was
weren't the greatest of stories. I really enjoyed the 90s. I have to say, I love Bronze Age stuff from the late 70s, early 80s. Absolutely adore it, and that's where most of my inspiration comes from. But the 90s was great fun because it was just so bombastic. It was just all over the place. Some of it was crazy. There was a lot of crap thrown at the wall, and some of it just didn't do well. Some of it just didn't stick. But there was some really even some of those comics that only looked nice and didn't actually read too well, or even some of them that didn't look that great but read really well. There was just so much creativity going on. It was like a spike. I feel that was one of the spikes. Sort of the mid 80s to the end of the 80s dropped off, even though we had greats like Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and what have you. But the monthly sort of, you know, that swathe of books, it kind of dropped off a little bit. And then in the 90s there was just this spike. And of course in the UK we had Britpop and all that kind of stuff. So, but pop culture was really buzzing in the middle of the 90s. No matter how, you know, no matter whether some of it was crap or not, it doesn't matter. It was like there was just this stuff going on.
Yeah, it seems
and
to
I think it's flattened off. That's what's flattened off. I think the energy. I think there's still talent out there. There's still people out there, but it's just there's no energy anymore.
Well, I think a lot of that too is you saw a lot of your workhorses that came in the 60s and 70s were hitting retirement age about the 90s, 2000s, and we're either slowing down or getting out. And very few people that came into the market in the 90s and 2000s were genuine workhorses. You had your Burns, you had your Perez, but you know, the ones that everybody remembers is like Art Adams, and I'm trying to search for other names here. Frank Quietly is another one that came in that weren't necessarily always hitting. They were doing great, phenomenal work, but they weren't producing on a regular basis like these old workhorses used to.
No.
You know, you'd have every issue of Brave and the Bold by Jim Aparo is a consistency that is just incredible. The Savage Sword of Conan's with John, Ernie, and
Alfredo,
yeah. A level of consistent, a level of quality that was always consistent.
Yeah,
you know, and now you like if you get some of these guys to do covers.
Yeah. The consistent. That's what I say. It's the consistency, and that joined to the energy level. It's just it's quite flat at the moment, and I think that's
I think it's down to the talent. Like I said before, I think these guys are just supremely talented.
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of it about at the moment, but it will come back. That's just my opinion. There are some people out there, but not as many. You know.
Yeah, I think it's just the route to market. I think it's just the way they're getting their stuff out. It just, especially when you've got the internet, you think it's such a big shop window, but unfortunately, it's very much like it's very crowded, and everybody's got their hand up.
Yeah,
everybody's saying, "Look at me."
It's
and
also
so,
even more secluded, even more secluded than the direct market.
Yeah,
you have to go out there and intentionally look for this product on Kickstarter or on Indiegogo in order to go get it. And you have to be steered there. Luckily, we've got the internet because, I mean, in podcasting, especially with the bug that popped up and people started talking to each other online, or the crowdfunding market wouldn't be at where it's at today. And there's a lot of really top quality ingenious stuff coming out through the
but the only way that's
through the crowdfunding market, very few people are seeing.
The only way it's going to work is in some way making the internet the new newsstand. Because the reason that one of the main reasons that there were so many big sales back then, back when the newsstand was king, was because literally books were on shelves.
Yeah.
If you don't see them, you can't buy them.
Exactly.
And that's for me. You can talk about pop culture. You can talk about ideology. You can talk about the fact that we went to the direct market, and you can talk about variant covers and collectors markets, and maybe the stories of this, that, or the other. All of that to me is small fry compared to the fact that books are not on shelves, and kids are not sitting going, "Oh look, there's more comics on shelves. I'm going to buy a comic." Okay, they're not cheap. Okay, and they're not on shelves. That's it. That's what it comes down to. If they're not readily available, then cheap to buy, kids ain't gonna buy.
It's like everything in life. You know, let's look at this in a calm way. The reason that they were selling millions and millions, literally millions of comics in the 40s, is because nobody was watching television. There wasn't any television.
There is that as well.
You know, and it's all things mixed together. You know, and I think that the comics that were being produced in those times by Will Eisner and Jack Kirby and those people were the best. It's like Disney when he did Snow White was the first full-length animated cartoon in 1928, was it? So it was the only one. It was the first one. It was the only one, but it's still probably one of the best ones.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt
because
about that.
All those talented people working on that full-length movie. Was it 2.5 million drawings? Somebody did those. It wasn't one
But
guy,
again,
but somebody did those.
There's still
something else to keep in mind during that period, though. Too, we had the Eisners, we had the Kirbys, but there was also a large amount of material that was being printed back then that was sheer crap.
Yeah, like every,
just
like
like
all
today.
the time. Yeah,
very much like today.
But that's what I'm saying. If it's not out on shelves, they ain't going to buy it.
Right.
So the newsstand, we need a new newsstand.
But I don't think
we need a new environment where people can see it.
The kids need re-educating because they'd rather look at the phone and have it on an app.
Re-education camps now.
Yes, re-education.
Do it. Yeah.
But even so, I mean, even if the comics were, even if all periodicals, if they made every single floppy now, okay, made them digital only, okay. Yeah. But they made, but they gave it an environment where it was like the newsstand, where kids could see it. They'd be surfing through whatever they're doing, TikTok or Facebook. I know that's for old wine aunts now, or Twitter or whatever. And there's an ad come up like, "Oh, this is the latest digital comic, okay, from Marvel. Buy it now. It's only 50 cents." Okay, people would get it. Okay, there is like that minimum price. I think it was said to be 59p in the UK. That was back when we had a decent currency, or 99 cents in the US. Okay, it was like this so cheap that people will just go, "Oh yeah, all right." It's so cheap, and that's what you need. But unfortunately, we've got a direct market that did restrict the whole digital thing, and asking people to buy a digital comic, which they don't have, they don't own, they don't keep, they don't have the rights to, for the same price as a piece of literally a book that they can pick up, people aren't going to do it. It doesn't matter how old they are. Okay, they're going to go, "Well, I haven't got anything for that." Right. And so you need it to be really cheap. Look at Shonen Jump, look at manga, look at the way that they're doing that. It's like people are flocking to it because it's cheap and it's entertaining and it's there. Okay, people know about it. It's like it's ever present.
Again, look at the format of the early IPC books, the 2000 AD books, just newsprint,
they were
saddle stitched and stapled. Yeah,
and we loved them, and they were cheap.
Yep,
and I think that's what it comes down to. It's just like if it's not available, if it's not readily, easily available, accessible, then people are lazy and they won't get it.
Yeah.
So if you make it ever present and available, no matter what proportion of it is crap, okay, people are going to buy stuff. They're going to buy it. But if it's not, so and then unfortunately, we go around in a circular argument here. We get back to the point that because it's not believed that you can make real big money out of comics, it doesn't happen. So what you need someone to come into the market who's happy to just make hundreds of thousands or possibly even millions rather than billions, okay, and make this environment happen.
Well, that's the big
we're
thing.
doing it to a degree ourselves, okay, but in order for it to be ever present and have a large proportion or even a medium proportion of the potential audiences, younger audiences buying comics, okay, whether they be digital or not, you need to have them available for them to see and ever present. And if they're not, ain't happening.
I think a lot of the marketing aspect of comics has been lost because when it first came out, they were just tossed on the stand for a dime. The main reason they did them was to keep those presses wet so that they could print newspapers, the next edition, and not have to clean the damn press out of all of the sticky black ink. We need to get there. There's an aspect of the market that needs to stay fine art, absolutely, but we need to get back to an accessibility level where the like you were saying, the books are almost giveaway, but they still need to be physical. I think we need to come up with a cheaper, maybe like a Reader's Digest size book that's accessible, that's easily affordable, that's readily available. I think that's really where the key is. There needs to be a Donald Duck comic out there the size of the old Disney Adventures magazine, only all comics. Either it's in black and white or in color. It doesn't matter. As long as it's cheap and folks can find it and buy it on impulse.
But the problem is still, what shelves do you put it on? You know, it's getting it into those outlets. I mean, like Batman, Doctor Who, the Doctor Who Adventures, the Ben 10 work I was on, they were all out in supermarkets.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's where they sold. They didn't sell anywhere else.
Well, I'll tell you something else that's a problem that I encountered with Crikey. I've told you, it cost me £2,000 to put into Borders, and that was just to walk through the door with it.
Mm.
Yeah.
That was it. And if my boxes if Crikey's on the shelf and it sells and there's none left, but they're in the back, it doesn't guarantee that people will think, oh, we need to get that box of Crikey's on the shelf because it's sold out.
No. Yeah, every time I walk into,
that's a problem.
Every time I walk into Barnes and Nobles now, I go to the periodicals section, and they have about 4 racks double-sided of all the different magazines that are out, stuff that I've never seen before. But it's always a quest for me to find the comics and sequential art type oriented material, even the manga material. But you're always going to see those Archie digests down at the front rack, right in the front, because they're so small. They have to be displayed out in the open, or they're buried.
We have I think this is still going. You'll know this, Russ. Is Commando Comics still going in Battle Picture Library?
Do you think they are? I think
because they're up to like 6,000, number 6,000.
Yeah.
So there's the proof that it can work.
Yeah,
and they're only small digest things like A5 sort of similar size.
Are they really? Okay.
Yeah, they're really small.
Black and white as well, aren't they?
Black and white. Probably about 60 pages maybe or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
a couple of panels a page, and they're brilliant, aren't they?
Yeah, I used to pick them up when I was a kid. Yeah, and I wasn't into war stories at all.
Cam Kennedy started in Commando.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Back in the late '60s, and so the proof is there that they need to be there, and they need to be in people's faces to look at this. It's only 50 cents or whatever, 50p or whatever. And people will pick it up.
Well, we still have a lot of saddle stitched publications about the size of what we would call an ash can back in the 80s and 90s, which is an 8.5 by 11 sheet folded in half.
Yeah,
that you see on the grocery counters just as you walk out through the checkout. None of them are comics except for Archie, and the Archie digest. Sometimes they're really thick or really small. It's $6 to $10 a hit, and these other publications are $5.
But that's why I agreed to go with a publisher for my books.
Yeah,
because they're not it's so difficult for me to sell them any other way.
Yeah.
The only chance I've got, I mean, don't get me wrong, like doing crowdfunding is great. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the interaction with people. Okay, with the backers, my supporters. I love it when they get a book and there's like I've put prints in there and maybe a signed bit of artwork or something, and they display it, they put it up on Twitter. It's like, it's really, really rewarding. It's fantastic to see that. Okay. But for me, I can't do a YouTube channel because I'm too bloody busy. Okay. I know you can say, oh, there's other people that do YouTube channels and they're busy. No, they're busy on their own books. Okay. I have my book and I have to pay the mortgage. Okay. I have to I can't rely just on my
presence,
presence and my crowdfunded book. I just can't. It just doesn't work for me. Doesn't mean it doesn't work for other people, and it's not a great model. It just isn't working for me. Okay. So I can't do that. So that I turn and having other people involved because I'm working on other things means I have to pay other people to get involved in my own books.
Yeah.
Okay. So straight away your profit's going down and down and down and down and down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the crowdfunding was great. I enjoyed it. I loved it. But I really, and this is also an artistic approach as well. I'd really like to get to a bigger audience, not because of my ego. It's not about ego. I don't care if I knew I could get just 1,000 people doing, Indiegogo or Kickstarter, then maybe I would sort of lean into that more because I know that I could finance it. But I can't guarantee those things, and it is about readership. It's not about the ego trip of having more people read your comics or being a big seller. That's not what it's about. You want to get your story out. You've written your story for a reason.
Yeah.
You've written your story because you want to reach people with the things that you've put in it. Right. Okay. And so the idea is that hopefully by having a mid-level publisher going on Amazon, going global, going worldwide, I could maybe get a bigger storefront.
Bigger reach.
And just have a bigger, and much like I was saying about the newsstand, the bigger the storefront, the bigger the percentage of people see it, thereby the small percentage that you're going to get of those people that do actually buy it is going to be bigger, because literally just all the rations are bigger, as it were.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going that way. Again, it's all experimental. We'll see where it goes. My publisher actually asked me, and they said, "What's the genre of your book? Is it manga?" And I was almost tempted to go, yeah, it's manga. Let's see if I get bigger sales out of it.
You should have said it.
It's just it's hardcore sequential art. Manga is cheap, quality, and accessible.
It is.
You can still jump on volume ones now of their most successful titles. Where the hell do you start with mainstream books? Yeah. When you get a number one every other week,
that is difficult. So that is difficult, which is why I'm a big fan of miniseries, because you can buy the miniseries and know that you've got a whole story. Yeah. I really love the way Mike Mignola did Hellboy back in the 90s. He's just like, he did miniseries. Everything was a miniseries, and they ended up in beautiful volumes in graphic novels that people can still buy and consume, in a unit.
That was also a necessity too for Dark Horse to make sure that they had the entire story in house.
Yeah,
you had 3 or 4 issues, the story was done, then Dark Horse would solicit for the book and put it out, and it's a lot easier to be on time when everything's in house.
Yes,
and already sitting there. That's the way 2000 AD, from what I understand, would work. An entire story was done, no matter how many chapters it was done, and then you just slotted those chapters into that book on your print files, and you were.
So they knew what they had. Yeah,
they knew what they had even months in advance. Bristolian says crowdfunding should only ever be a starter. You should look at every avenue to sell your wares. You're doing the right thing, Russ.
Thanks,
there you
go.
Everything needs to be a stepping stone, and we need more than, you can't depend upon one source, because any of these platforms, and we've seen it happen. I've seen it happen on Amazon. I've seen it happen on YouTube. I've seen it happen, and Kickstarter could change their rules for their platform in a snap, and you're done.
You're done.
You're done. My brother used to create children's books for Amazon, and he was cleaning up. He was making $3,000 a week doing all sorts of little tiny children's books, getting a lot of little money from a lot of different sources. Amazon changes their rules on how things are going to be displayed and promoted. He went from $3,000 a month to $300 a month overnight, literally, in order for the larger publishers to be promoted.
That's the thing.
And that's the way it's always going to work. You can't depend upon any of these platforms as a steady source of income. You can use it as income, absolutely. Just don't be dependent on just that one platform, because they will go through and change their rules in a snap, and you're done. And it's sad, but it's the way it works right now, especially right now, because these platforms are just open for to make their own way, to make their own rules, and however they have to make money, that's how they're going to make money.
They're also geared towards the bigger corporates.
Once they get big enough, that's who they have to cater to in order to make the big money.
Exactly. So if bigger publishers come in and say, "Yeah, okay, we'll give you a fee, put us at the top," they're going to do it. It's a business,
and in the short unit, comics have never been big money.
No,
but comics are a lot of money from a lot of little sources.
Yeah, volume.
Yeah,
volume.
Comics were always about volume, which is why the newsstand was so important. Which is why the only way it works is by getting them out in front of a lot of eyes.
Though that spiral rack was always gate kept. It always gave people a place. They would know where the comics are, because they'd look for that spiral rack, or they'd walk in and listen for the squeak.
As much as I love comic shops and love those kind of shops, I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I love that stuff. That's where I go. You're not picking up the general public in those shops.
Well, that and nothing matches that quest of having to try to find your favorite book.
Exactly.
And hit those, because when I was a kid, I knew where the spiral racks were, all the spiral racks within a 30-mile radius of my house.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for people to say the comic industry is dead, it's dying, it's like, no, it's not. It's not. It's changing. It's in flux. But I do kind of adhere to the concept that going to the direct market was the beginning the beginning of a very slow demise of floppies, of weekly, monthly titles.
Well, see, and the direct market was never meant to replace the spiral rack. It was a group of guys that got together that wanted to read the books that were out every month for free or next to free, and to sell them to their friends for free or next to free.
Yeah.
You know, that was the whole purpose. It wasn't meant to literally take over the entire art form and be the only source that you, because back when the direct market started, you still had these spiral wraps, you still had Bazooka Joe bubblegums, the comic strips were still raging strong. There was multiple points for comics out there.
Yeah, having it running in tandem was brilliant.
Yes,
but when they went full direct market, that was the nail in the coffin. That was the thing that killed it.
That
and it took a long time. It's still taking time. I'm not sounding the death knell of the floppy just yet. I think it's got legs in it still yet, even in the current environment. But it will eventually go. It will eventually be just a digital thing. And looking at the fact that trade paperbacks and graphic novels are the vast majority, and that I include manga and all those other things, like Dogman and all that stuff, that's selling through bookshops.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the money is in the, let's call it the comic book stroke sequential art, sequential storytelling industry.
It's expanding again. Yeah.
It is. So to say that it's all dead is just a silly thing to say.
Oh, absolutely.
But and I don't want to demonize the direct market, because I love comic book shops. But by going one way and one way only, it kind of doomed the floppy comic.
I went into Forbidden Planet last Friday in Manchester, and it's two floors, and you walk in and you go down in the basement, but you walk in and it's just toys, merchandise for Star Wars and whatever. And it's always been that way in there. And then when you used to go downstairs, it was comics. But I went down on Friday and it's only half comics now.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's
because the merchandising has gone downstairs as well now. So when you're walking down the stairs to it, all you could see was Spider-Man models, And I asked, I said the last week, I asked the guy for where the Mobius books were, and there was one volume. I don't mean one set, one volume of Mobius. And he said it's there, and he pointed, and there was all this color, and I couldn't see it, So,
but
the larger corporations have stopped caring about the form; they've stopped caring about their reprints as well. And they'll do their omnibuses, and there may be an occasional archive book or two, but trying to make it accessible, like the Essential volumes or the Showcase Presents black and white volumes, are gone.
Let me ask you,
and they're also disappearing from the comics or from the bookstores now too.
Some of that is down to the way they're presenting them and the way they want to resell. I mean, like recoloring stuff and putting out the Essentials books are cheap for what they are. Okay. But if you can reformat it, re-edit it, recolor it, and put it out as a hardback and make twice or three times as much money, you're going to do that. And you're going to put it on Amazon, and you're going to put it on Waterstones and Barnes and Nobles. And that's the way you're going to do it. And I think what you saw there, Glenn, is a real world example of the way that the market is moving towards graphic novels, trade paperbacks, and and buying that kind of stuff in a bookstore environment and not in a comic book environment, comic book shop environment.
And yet still the main outlet for that material right now, the main outlet for the hardcover books, maybe not necessarily the omnibuses, but the hardcover collections and the trade paperbacks, and that the main outlet is now Ollie's.
Yeah.
Because they're selling those overstocks, and they're taking a $20 book that the retailers get to sell, the comic shop retailers get to sell for $20 and knocking it down to $3.99.
Let me ask you,
people are buying it there in droves.
Let me ask you two a question here. When I went down to Forbidden Planet on Friday, there were these fantastic volumes of Mike Mignola Hellboy volumes. I think there were 5. And then there was an art of. And the art of was this big, thick thing, beautifully produced, and it was £100. Who buys that? I would never buy that. I might buy a Jack Kirby one, but I wouldn't buy a Matt Mignola.
Say I have
exactly. Only the deep lovers of Mignola would buy that. Yeah,
exactly. Like
I'm not saying they don't. I'm just asking who buys that.
Yeah, so I bought the John Buscema one, and I bought the Brian Bolland one. Like, I like big, massive volumes.
No, these are only sort of regular size things.
Yeah, I I wouldn't necessarily pay that kind of money. I bought the Big John Buscema book, which is kind of like just over magazine size.
Right.
And I've got some, but I mean, that's hardback. And I think that was like 35, 40 quid. So that's like a reasonable amount of money. The really big ones I got for 80 quid each, which I thought was really cheap. But if I got,
because here in the States, they're 125, 150 a hit. Yeah.
But to buy, like I've got the IDW artisan ones, to buy one of those for more than 30 quid, no way, Jose. I wouldn't. And I'm into it. Like you're saying, I think that's the point, Glenn, is that I'm really into it. So, but we have veered off from.
We always do.
That's all right. We're 10 minutes over anyway.
Right.
At least we're still talking about comics.
Local comic shops have had to diversify. They can't survive on comics alone.
Indeed. And
a lot of that is the fault of these big publishers and the mindset of the LCS guy that there's only two major companies out there with a bunch of secondary companies, with a bunch of alternative, so-called independent alternative books that they get to poop on.
Yeah. However, the LCS that I go to on a regular basis, one I mentioned the other week, has tons of old 2000 ADs and like paper ones, from the original run, and like all kind of Marvel comics and what have you.
Those shops are going to last the longest.
Those shops are going to do well because people are going to go in there looking for collections, and it's not. I mean, I'm not a collector. I don't consider myself a collector. I'm a reader. Okay, so I want to buy some of those old books so that I can finger through the pages and enjoy the art on them, as well as read it. If I really want to read a run, I'll try and pick up an essential, or I'll even do one of those new legend ones or whatever they are. I'll pick up one of those. I picked up the
Epic collections.
The Epic. I picked up the Skrull Kree War, which I had in hardback, but I wanted to have one to flick through, and I picked up the Kang the Conqueror War in the Kang War or whatever it is in Avengers. I picked that up recently as well.
Steve Englehart run.
They're fairly cheap and easy to pick up. So if you actually want to read them, there's ways you can read them. But if you want to finger through the original comics, there are places now that you can go buy those, which is
the essentials.
They were really hard to find. They were really hard to find a little while ago, and now you're finding that shops are actually
you're finding them. They're still hard to find over here.
Right. Okay. I mean, I like that comic shop is great. It's literally got bigger than my drawing board.
That's a shop that cares about comics and wants to make money. That's what that is.
Set of 2000 ADs, all in paper, all paper ones. Like old ones. Fantastic.
Wow.
And I could spend thousands in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly that. That's a store I'd have to stay out of until or either that, or I'd have to come back every couple of days whenever I made a little money and buy more. I
went and picked up like 3 Savage Sword of Conants when I was there, and the one that they didn't have, which had the Iron Moons in it, is something along those lines. I loved that story. I remember picking it up when I was a kid and reading it on a boat somewhere.
Yeah.
And that was Buscema and Arcala, and they didn't have that one. And my son actually went on eBay and found one for 20 quid, so I picked it up there and then. So it's like it is totally nostalgic, but it's a wonderful thing to do. Go and pick up these old comics and feel them and remember
a couple of months ago, I had on the Zimcast, I had Dennis Barger on, and Dennis is a longtime retailer, had Wonder World Comics in Detroit for a long time. He still has it now. It's down in Monroe. It's in a mall. It's in a mall, and he stopped carrying direct new comics.
Right.
Stopped.
Yeah.
He makes his money now off of buying collections and
selling the collections.
The reading copies, the raw copies, sticks them in a bag and a board, sticks them in a big long display. It's probably got 1,000 foot store in the middle of a mall. But he catches the dads walking by with their kids, seeing Spider-Man on the wall and coming in and saying, "Hey, I read this Spider-Man story a long time ago. Do you have any McFarlane Spider-Mans?" He's got reading copies, which means they're not the big prices. He's got the really expensive ones displayed on the walls, but he carries those reading copies for $5, $6, $7, and it's nothing for a dad to come through and buy a couple of books that he remembered reading when he was a kid for his kid.
And he's making money out of that.
For their kids, he's making a lot of money.
That's good.
He says that nostalgia shops is what they're calling them. Is really the way to go.
quick story. Tim Quinn, the editor on my book, used to work for Marvel. Okay, when he was a young man, first job he was a clown. There you go. The guy's incredible. He did a South Bank show where he did the full interview with Stan Lee and what have you. The guy's just done everything. Yeah. He has done everything. He knows everybody. Okay, and he's edited. I work with him on occasion, and he's edited the Only Death Could Save Us series for me, and. He told me his story, and he puts this.
If he'd like to be on a podcast.
Oh, I'm sure he'd love to. Yeah, he occasionally puts up this picture of himself, and he tells the story. And he told me the story, and it's this little picture of him in the 50s or whatever it is, when he's like 5 or 7 years old, with a comic book. I can't even remember what it was. It was a dandy or something. Anyway, it's a comic book, and he's sitting on this hillock, and there's a black and white picture of him reading this. 30 years later, okay, or whatever, 25, 30 years later, whatever, he meets his to-be wife, okay, via a pen pal relationship, meets her and decides that he's going to bugger off to America, okay? So he goes off to America to make his fortune, where, with his wonderful new love. And he ends up in, I think it was Indianapolis or something like that. Again, I can't remember the story exactly. He eventually got a job on the New York Post. Okay. This guy just like went through, and they were just wandering around while they were waiting for the interview. Mm-hmm. And he goes into a comic book shop, and there's 3 comics. He says, I remember reading those when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so he doesn't pick, he says, because I'm a cheapskate, I didn't take out the expensive one. And I didn't take out the cheap one because it looked a bit ripped. I took the middle one. Yeah. And we bought it, and we went off for some lunch. We sat down, and he said, I opened it up, and inside was my name where I'd written it when I was a kid.
Wow.
It was the same bloody comic that was in
Holy crap.
That was in this picture. And he'd gone to America to make his fortune, and that's where his career all started.
Oh, wow.
And it was like the universe telling him this is right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And even now, the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up, just telling that story.
If you're in the middle of
such an inspirational story.
Fantastic. And you get a book like that,
I think it was Indianapolis. Either way, the story's true. It's absolutely true. Okay, wow. And it's just an amazing thing to have happen to you. Sort of like the coincidence, if you can call it coincidence. That was the universe talking to him. So the universe talks to us all on occasion. Yep. Listen.
Yep. But it is really hard to find good indie at one place. Yeah, it is. You have to at your comic shops. Once you find a good shop that's offering a lot of different indies, that's one that you need to visit as much as possible. That's why I always say, if you ever get a chance, go to your retailer. You got a couple hours, go to your local retailer, look for those boxes that aren't looked through all the time, and take a look through those boxes, because there's probably some really good gems in there, some awesome reading. You never know how great a hot stuff story is until you try it. You never know the genius of Sheldon Moldoff until you sit down and read A Sugar and Spike. 2 little kids. Oh, what can you do with that? He did a lot of great stuff, and a lot of that material is super evergreen. That's phenomenal. If you haven't read an old Warren Erie or Creepy, you really need to do that. You need to sit there and read it. The Old Vampirellas by Esteban Maroto, just beautiful material, great stories, just solid entertainment. So take a few hours out when you get the chance and go visit your local retailer. I'm sure he'll appreciate you being there and going through his back issue boxes and finding that gold, because it's there. It's there. You just have to look for it. Right. We want to thank everybody for stopping by Comics by Night. We really do, for the 21st of October. 21st of October. This time last year, I was on a respirator and in a coma. So,
wow.
Yes, sir.
Here you are.
All the way between at least the 17th of October till about the 22nd or 3rd of November. I was down.
Wow.
So, and I come back. Everybody told me, you came back for a reason. There's a reason. And I didn't realize it. Seriously, I didn't realize it until a couple of days ago, when I looked at the mortality rates of people going on a respirator and actually coming out of it. I am incredibly lucky. It was like 97 point something % of the people that went on those respirators at my age didn't make it.
Wow.
And I died twice and come back. And so I'm sitting, after I saw that figure, I'm sitting there because I'm still mentally working through everything that has happened to me in the last year, all the physical therapy, because when you're on that respirator, everything atrophies, all of your muscles atrophy, your brain atrophies, your eyes, your mouth, the little muscles on the inside of your ear atrophy. So you have to relearn how to do everything. You know, it took a while to speak, took a while to look properly or see. Took a while for me to realize that I had fake teeth in, and that was after they gave me a swallow test. So I was tube fed for an extra couple months because of that, failing that stupid test. But like I said, everybody told me I come back for a reason, and the only thing that I could think of, the main reason I come back, was to do more of this, do more podcasting, do more comics, do more talking about the stuff that I love. There's a reason this art form is here, and I know. I'm a testimony to the fact that it kept me sane when I was a kid, and it can do the same for a lot of other people out there, and a lot of entertainment value. And it's all in how you do it, where you do it, how you love to do it, and how you get out there. And that's really why we do these podcasts here on the Indie Comics Network, over on YouTube and on Facebook. We deeply appreciate everybody here today, especially Bristoli and Dave, who's been such a great part of the chat. So glad you recovered, Randy. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dave, very much. I am very grateful to have too. And I know a lot of people like Luke Stone were down and aren't quite back 100%, even still, you know, even months later. And a lot of folks that had COVID are still suffering from the after effects from it. And I still have a little problem here and there, but compared to a lot of other people, it's a very little problem. So deeply happy to be back. Charles actually got someplace where he could send a message. Says, good morning. Wish I could have been there. Wish you could have been too, Charles. Anytime, every time you're around. You're always welcome here. Russ, tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, we're going to do this quick, aren't we? Because we're on time. You can find me at russleach.com. You can find out about my run in Batman, my run in Doctor Who. You can find out about Only Death Can Save Us there. Come find me at russleach.com. All my social medias are there.
I should have blown you up sooner. There you go. Show those. There you go. Glenn, tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, get me on the usual places like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those kind of things. But if you want to get in touch with me, go to Comics Unlimited Magazine at gmail.com. I've also got all my work is on, or most of my work is on Amazon. Got 10 books on there, lots of magazines. So check it out on Amazon. You'll find it. Just put my name in, and there you go.
Hopefully, you'll find an article with me in that issue as well.
Yeah,
I'm that guy chasing down the train as it's leaving the station.
I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't say anything.
I know you were. That's why I said it first. You can find me over at Facebook. You can always contact me at thezimcast@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Love to hear any input that you have, suggestions, comments, questions, anything like that for future shows. We are here every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for Comics by Night. We love doing this. We're talking about what we love. If you come back on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can see the Sunday Funnies where we talk about the books and the art that we love there as well. Or if you want to stop by Wednesday night at 10 p.m. now, we shoved back another couple hours because of all of what we're calling the podcast constipation that was happening at the 8 o'clock hour. I moved back to 10 to try to open the flow a little bit. Last Wednesday's show was really good. We got really good numbers, so that was a good move for us. Just like this show, who would have thought that I could get up at 5 a.m. for one, and for two, talk about comics to folks and have a lot of people listen. And that we do get a lot of listeners on this program, and we deeply appreciate all of you. And I know we also get a lot of people that listen to us because we're archived over on the Indie Comics Network over on YouTube. I'm trying to speak faster because I only have 7 minutes. 7 minutes left. Facebook, for whatever reason, hates us going longer than 2 hours now. So we're trying to cut this down to under the 2. And at an hour and a half, I start worrying. So, and here it is, an hour and 53. So love you all very much. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Russ, for doing this. Deeply appreciate you every time you're here. Charles, Brian K. Morris, sorry you didn't make it. Scott, damn it, you're going to have to get up early to be on this show, but I'll send you links anyway. Hope someday we'll get Mr. Rosema on. But this would have been a great show for him to talk about how to break down. You're laughing, Russ. Love to have it. Would have loved to have you on today as we talked about comics and stuff. So everybody take care. We're going to go out almost the same way we came in. Well, actually, first, I want to run a quick bump. It's only a couple minutes, and I think I've got that time for Rift Riders. If you go over to Indiegogo now and look at that Rift Riders campaign, we have a tier over there, an Arrow Comics tier that's been pretty successful. For $50, you get 8 comics. One of those is a part of Only Death Can Save Us. There's a great anthology book over there called Revolt. There's HeroBot Zero that I did. It's about a 3-foot tall robot. Calico, Paragon is available there. Marvy, Sin Killer #1 is over there. Rift Riders and Hybrids from Luke Stone is also part of that package. So go over there and take a look at it. He's just about hit the 10 grand mark on that campaign, and we're hoping to get there and past it before it's over, just so you can have some great Arrow product. There's a lot more great Arrow product coming in 2023. A lot of stuff planned. It's going to be a real busy year. And like I said, that's what we come back here for. So Indie Comics Network says it only screws up over 2 hours on pre-records. You're good. Oh, well, don't tempt me now. We'll
don't tell him that.
We'll carry on then.
Thanks for that information now. Thank you, HR, at Indie Comics Network. We're going to go anyway. We'll see everybody soon. Take care. We're going to run that bump and then run the ending, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for being here. Try to leave this industry in better shape than what you found. And if you know a book out there that you love, tell people that you love it. You know, don't be afraid. Comics aren't just kiddie literature anymore, you know, and haven't been for many, many decades. So have fun, folks. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
When your timeline reaches its Armageddon, what's a kid to do?
I'm not a...
Snag the keys to your mom's experimental ship, of course.
That's not quite how it happened.
Drift aimlessly in the rift between dimensions, trying to figure out how to operate it.
Now hold on a sec.
Pick up a few hitchhikers.
Hi! Hello.
And maybe solve a disturbing mystery that could lead to the destruction of reality itself.
You know, if there's time... There's always time.
I'm not so sure about that.
Get in on the adventure with the Rift Riders on Indiegogo.
Look, everybody's entitled to be an idiot.
We've all heard the stories. We've all heard the legends. Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Billy the Kid. But there's a secret history to the Old West. One that seems too strange to be true, but, well, we all know what they say about the truth. Very big ape, very big guns, throwing very big holes, very bad people. I think the world is finally ready to hear the story of the strangest, the most startling Western hero of them all. Six-gun gorilla, long days of vengeance.
Do you draw the Flintstones naked? There's a market for that.
There's a market for that. Don't forget, if you go over to Gemini Comic Supply, if you get Gemini mailers, you can use the code RAGIN10 on your way out. You'll get 10% off your next Gemini mailer order. So go over there and do that. Everybody knows the Gemini mailers are the best way to ship out your crowdfunding campaigns. he said as he stalls while he finds this. Thank you very much, everybody.
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time with theory.